Patrick, is it still unseasonably warm in Helsinki, or?
It is. I am perspiring, which is unusual for this country.
Yeah, it's generally thought of as a cold place. We're close to 90 here on the west side of LA, and Roger's up near 100 on his part of LA.
100 degrees. So that's what 6.
It's in the mid 30s.
Yeah, mid 30s Celsius, 33.
It's almost as high here. Almost.
It's like hitting 40 in Japan right now in places.
Really?
Oh.
They declared a national emergency because of the heat.
They also have high humidity, so it just compounds the.
Oh yeah, in Japan, 30 feels like 50.
It was 30 a few days when I was in Japan in September a couple of years ago, and it was miserable. I can't imagine 40.
Well, at least if you're in a big city, you have air conditioning in every.
Yeah. It was only when we were out and about that it was really a big problem. But yeah, there's people without air conditioning that have died.
Oof.
Yeah.
I know. I think people in the Bay Area are going to start getting those installed as regular equipment into a house. Well,
way to bring the mood down.
Yeah, sorry about that.
On that note,
we have a fun little show now.
Let's turn this attitude around.
Turn that frown upside down.
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. 3, 2.
Do you think the Daily Tech News Show is worth a nickel a show? Well, a lot of us do. Go to dailytechnewsshow.com/support and join us.
This is the Daily Tech News for Tuesday, July 24th, 2018 in Los Angeles. I'm Tom Merritt.
And from Studio Feline, I am Scooter Lane.
And from Helsinki, or almost thereabouts, I am Scooter Lane's friend, Patrick Beja.
We are all the friends of Scooter Lane here, including our producer, Roger Chang.
Yes, I have known Scooter for quite some time.
It's true. We go way back.
The trees.
Since your school days, as a matter of fact. Yeah. Well, we have got a packed show, so let's carry on with a few tech things you should know.
Brad Sams over at Thurrott.com has sources that tell him Microsoft is planning 2 different pieces of Xbox hardware, a traditional console and one for streaming games. And we're going to talk about this in a lot more detail a little later in the show.
Indeed, we will, Scooter. Chrome 68 marks any website delivered without HTTPS as not secure. A secure connection can prevent ad injection and crypto mining, among other things. The warning will appear in the address bar next to the URL in gray.
The EU has fined Philips, Asus, Pioneer, and Denon and Marantz a collective total of 111.2 million euros for imposing fixed or minimum online prices for their products. In other words, price fixing. Pioneer was also found attempting to restrict selling products across borders. All the companies admitted the wrongdoing in exchange for lower fines.
Amazon Echo users can now adjust the treble, the mid-range, or the bass on their smart speaker inside the Her app or by voice control. Voice control is limited to English speakers in the US, at least at first. The initial rollout is happening now with other regions and languages coming soon.
They're all about that bass and treble.
Facebook Hong Kong Limited has registered a subsidiary in China. Facebook said it will focus on training and workshops for software developers, similar to hubs in France, Brazil, India, and Korea.
Yeah, but getting another company like Google, like Apple, like Microsoft. Well, Microsoft has a lot more going on there, but getting a little finger into China. All right, let's talk a little more about the Wall Street Journal reporting Monday that a U.S. Department of Homeland Security report claims Russian groups called Dragonfly or Energetic Bear used spear phishing attacks on U.S. energy suppliers to gain network credentials for access to U.S. utilities. You'll see the word 100 bandied around. That refers to the number of employees who were successfully spearphished, not the number of control centers. Robert M. Lee, CEO of security company Dragos Inc., noted on Twitter that many of the reports are misleading and says the intrusions involved adversaries doing things like taking screenshots of interface panels out of manuals sometimes, most likely in preparation for further actions later. The U.S. power grid is complex, and while absolutely gaining any access to utility networks is very serious, it doesn't immediately lead to the capability to cause blackouts or other such measures. It could down the road if you don't do anything about it, but this is not, they're in the centers and they can throw the switch anytime, as some reports may have led you to believe.
Well, and it sounds like Robert Lee is saying the same thing. This could be an issue down the road, but he sees no evidence right now that it's anything more than, some pictures here and there.
I wonder how adequately they're trained if they're falling to spear phishing attacks. I mean, spear phishing, as we know, is targeted, so that's relatively targeted. And as Alison Sheridan noted a week ago or something, anyone can fall for some kind of attack, but given the nature of their job, everyone should be trained, I think, and not everyone is interested in tech and actually following how those things work. But I'm guessing they have training programs, and if they don't, now they will.
We have another possible preventative measure a little later in the show too.
Mm-hmm.
Sources tell Bloomberg that Verizon is considering maybe partnering with Google or Apple for a TV service to offer 5G in Los Angeles and Sacramento and some other test markets, perhaps as early as later this year. Now, last month, Verizon folded its Go90 streaming app. As of at a May investor conference, Chief Financial Officer Matt Ellis said that Verizon wants the outside help until it gets comfortable with its own internet-based video service. Google's YouTube TV offers more than 60 channels on the live TV app for $40 a month. Apple currently does not actually have a live streaming service, but we keep waiting for it to come out with one. Patrick, what are your thoughts? Would Verizon partner with Google or Apple?
I think Apple needs partnerships. It's not like they have, difficulty finding partners usually, but the thing, places or partners are getting rare. I think everyone is catching on that this is needed. I don't know. Honestly, I think Apple might be although would Apple partner with Verizon? Wouldn't they go for the big dog AT&T? I don't know. Maybe AT&T.
Well, Verizon's a bigger dog than AT&T, right?
Oh, is it? Okay. Well,
they're both pretty big. AT&T may be bigger.
Number one and two.
Lately, but they're the top two in there. I think it's less about going with the big dog and more about Apple wants to control the user experience. It wants to control the subscription relationship and the data, which is one of the reasons we have all these weird things where you can't buy a Kindle book in the Amazon app. You have to go to the web. So I can't imagine that they would come to an agreement, although Verizon just wants to have this be a temporary agreement until they get their own service up and running over 5G. I think the more concerning part of this is the idea of bundling a TV service into 5G, which could potentially have anti-competitive problems with it. It might be fine. It might be like, hey, we'll give you a discount if you have our 5G service on this television service. But if it also doesn't count against data caps or if it's prioritized in any way, then that starts to be a problem.
Indeed. Google says none of its more than 85,000 employees has been successfully phished on work-related accounts since it began requiring physical security keys in early 2017. The keys are usually USB keys like the YubiKey. A Google spokesperson said users might be asked to authenticate using their security key for many different apps or reasons. It all depends on the sensitivity of the app and the risk of the user at that point in time. Yeah,
so this could be the solution to the utility problem, right? If it's like, hey, make sure everybody's on a physical two-factor authentication with some kind of key. It can be Yubico's or somebody else's. But the way these work, a lot of people don't realize is they can work with USB-A. They can work with USB-C. There's even a version that's a little more expensive that can work with a phone through the NFC. But you have to have the key present in order to complete the login. So SMS two-factor is the least secure because there is a method by which people can intercept, spoof your phone number and intercept you. It's not easy, but it's possible. And when I say it's not easy, it's not like you and I could just do it walking off the street, but users can, or someone who wants to do this can do it.
Especially if it's targeted.
Yeah. And especially if they're targeting like a CEO or something like that, it's worth the effort. Authenticators are good, but authenticators can also sometimes be mimicked or copied off of a drive or something like that. That's much more difficult. And authenticators are almost as good as physical keys, but physical keys are the best because if you lose it, you de-authenticate it. And otherwise you have it and no one else has it. So you can't get phished because you can't give them the thing. You can get phished with your authenticator by somebody saying, hey, put your authenticator number in here. And then they go and they use that to identify you. That can't happen with a physical key as easily.
Yeah, I think in this case, it's for specific purposes of, where convenience is trumped by security needs. For most people, an authenticator should probably do the job. But in this case, I mean, touting it like this sounds like they're very confident in the fact that they won't be, I mean, a hack might happen at some point to someone in the future, but this is almost inviting people trying to get in just for bragging rights.
Yeah, although that's been happening with the FIDO Alliance and WebAuth, and Google's not alone in this. They're using a standard, and that standard has been under assault, and it has proved to be very durable. And
sure,
don't forget it, stuff like this is under assault all the time anyway.
I also want to know how many Google employees lose their YubiKey or equivalent, and how often they have to get replaced, and what kind of havoc that wreaks on the IT department.
Yeah, I can tell you, Eileen had one. She never lost hers, but I back when she worked at Google. But I'm sure there is it's not as easy as just walking down to the reception desk and getting another one. It can't be. Google announced a lot at the Google Cloud Next conference in San Francisco. Smart Reply, which proposes 3 different responses in Hangout chat, coming in a few weeks, and Smart Compose, which auto-completes sentences, is coming to G Suite soon. It's been an experimental feature in Gmail since May. For early adopters, grammar suggestions in Google Docs will recognize grammatical errors and offer corrections on a much more sophisticated level than you're used to in a word processor. AutoML Vision, which helps non-experts create machine learning modules for image and object recognition, is now in public beta. And Google announced 2 new cloud AutoML domains, one for natural language and one for translation. So those will start to get easier. You won't hear the name Google Duplex mentioned, but a suspiciously similar sounding Contact Center AI is being bundled with Dialogflow's package for call centers to act as the first human sounding voice a caller interacts with on the phone. So again, a much more sophisticated way for you to say, oh, I just need to check my account balance, and it will recognize your natural language and do that for you. Or if you have a more sophisticated problem, put you in touch with the right operator.
And this is when you are initiating a call with a service, usually that's where it will come in play, unlike Duplex, which initiates the call itself. And as we've seen in the first demo, when it didn't identify itself as an AI or a robot, however you want to call it, people were uncomfortable with it. I think in this case, you're used to having automated systems respond to you. So
people weren't uncomfortable with it if it didn't identify it themselves because they didn't know it was a bot.
Exactly.
They were only uncomfortable later when they found out.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, all of those sort of canned responses, sometimes when someone calls me on my iPhone, I'll just be like, message you later, because it's one of the default responses. They do come in handy where you're like, I just can't deal with this right now, but I don't want you to think I'm ignoring you. So same idea here, right? In Hangouts. I don't really like the idea of auto-completing my sentences, but I do like the idea of when I make grammatical errors, which is rare, but it does happen. Sure, spell check me with grammar.
Well, auto-completing sentences, just have you used it? You can turn it on in Gmail right now,
but
just
Tom,
not in G Suite.
I'm such a
suggests you have to take an action to complete the sentence.
I know.
So it's really helpful for things where like you know what you're going to say. It's always the same thing, and you can just press tab.
Exactly.
To finish that. Hey, thanks. We'll talk to you later kind of stuff.
Right. Especially, the more you work with people on kind of a work basis. And so you're checking in on that level. All right. Now for something completely different. Yeah. The Flanders Tourist Board, that's in Belgium, was running ads on Facebook featuring the art of Paul Rubens. Have you heard of Paul? If not, one ad showed Rubens's artwork called The Descent from the Cross. which depicts a bare-chested Jesus. Facebook removed the ad, one would assume because an algorithm probably, or maybe a moderator said, inappropriate content, nudity. The Flanders Tourist Board wrote an open letter to Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg, accusing them of cultural censorship. The board also created a video showing fake inspectors removing patrons at a museum who admit to having an account on Facebook as well. Facebook allows nude paintings on the site. That's not against its terms of service, but has very strict rules for advertisements which can't show nudity, even if it's artistic.
And that video was a parody video. They weren't really removing people, but they're saying, "Oh, is this what you want us to do? Protect Facebook users from seeing nudity? We'll kick them out of the museum."
That's also Jesus was never like wearing a shirt, right? Like we're all familiar with this
Shroud of Turin,
right?
Sarah, Shroud of Turin. Where was that supposed to be?
Oh, the shirt of Turin, right?
He's been wearing something. But I think the point is like, Facebook, this is art that most people do not consider controversial. Why are you banning this from an ad?
It's probably, we don't have the answer. It's probably something that was automated. And, when you're going to be doing all of these checks permanently on all of the content that's uploaded to your platform, as has been demanded by many people and many authorities, obviously some of those are going to happen. And the tourist board of Flanders took it with humor and made that really funny video in response. In France, we had over the weekend an incident that was a lot less funny. We've been having a political scandal. I'm not going to go into details, but someone, a Belgian person actually, who's managing a website that claims to be parody, but really verges on not fake news, but at least trollish news, was caught up in the algorithm. And of course, and it was commenting on that scandal we've been having. And so it gave a lot of fuel to people of many different sides of the political spectrum to say, aha, look, Facebook is censoring this humoristic site. Are they under the orders of the president or blah, blah, blah? And it's really funny because my feeling, it might be anecdotic, but my feeling is that those people who were the first to raise their hands in anger are also the first to demand that Facebook removes whatever they decide is objectionable content at that time. So yeah, the contrast is really stark there.
Yeah, I'm sure the restriction on advertising with nudity was caused by someone saying, "Oh, well, these artistic nudes are allowed on Facebook. I'm going to use them in my ads." And Facebook saying, "No, you're just trying to get around the rules here. You can't show nude stuff in your ads." I don't think anyone in their right mind would apply them to Rubens, to classic art, but this moderator or algorithm did not know that and was just trying to follow rules. And that's, the problem of determining where the line is the closer you get to trying to figure out the perfect line, the more you find out people have different ideas of what that line is.
Well, and also, it's not like full nudity. Bare-chested men. Yeah. Come on, man. Like that's Facebook is full of that. I don't know many people who are like, I'm very offended by this, unless
but it's also religious, right? So
that's true. Well, sure, yeah. You obviously that's part of the equation, probably in this sense, but
just not to drag this on for too long, but I think the conclusion to this, the moral of the story is that we have to accept that sometimes Facebook is going to make mistakes and not get all up in, our panties in a bunch or something to that effect every time it happens.
Yeah. Well, folks, if you want to get all the tech headlines each day in about 5 minutes, that'll keep all of your articles of clothing nice and smooth. Just subscribe to dailytechheadlines.com. All right, as we mentioned earlier, Brad Sams at Thurrott.com has sources telling him Microsoft planning 2 different pieces of Xbox hardware, a traditional next-generation console, the Xbox 2 or whatever, and a streaming box designed to work with a Microsoft game streaming platform, supposedly codenamed Scarlet Cloud. The console would locally handle things for some game elements. It's normal for controller input to be handled locally, right? Because then you take the input, you have it interact with the game, and then the game sends up to the cloud. But image processing and collision detection would be handled locally as well. Now, that would be combined with Microsoft's extensive worldwide data centers. Think Microsoft Azure. They've got data centers all over the world. So there's one likely close to you to help reduce latency significantly. They push a few more things into the box. They have the data centers, so they can keep latency to a minimum. Both these consoles supposedly might arrive in 2020, Patrick. So this sort of made you realize, oh, that's what a few of these comments about cloud gaming may have been related to.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. Their approach, there are two things here. The two consoles, I think you kind of, some people might understand that they're different products. They aren't. They're actually the same generation, and they would be playing the same game, except if you buy the cheap streaming one, you would only be able to stream them, so you would need a decent connection. And the more expensive traditional one, you would have a choice of streaming the games or actually buying a disc or buying it online and playing it entirely locally. So that double offering is really interesting because it gives you the options. And the other thing, as you mentioned, is that in the streaming box, in all versions, it would probably it would include, I'm sorry, some local computing to mitigate the lag, which is obviously the big issue in those types of services. So if they manage to solve this, I can understand that people like Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot, why he would think that in a few, maybe next generation, maybe the one after that, it's all going to be streaming, because this is a really clever way of solving all of those issues if it does work the way it's advertised. He made that comment, Ubisoft CEO, last month. He made that direct comment. He believes the rest of the gaming is going to be streaming all over. So maybe he had insight into Microsoft's plan. Maybe Sony has similar plans in the works, but those seem like they could be really game-changing for that industry.
Yeah, I mean, his exact words were, there will be one more console generation, and then after that, we will be streaming, all of us. And this certainly looks like that. Whether this is the last generation of consoles coming or not is to be determined, of course, and debated. But yeah, I mean, it's funny that you're like, no, it's not two different products. I mean, it is two different products. It's one that can't play games locally and one that can. I was thinking of it as, well, the Xbox right now can stream games. So this is just going to be an improved version of that kind of Xbox, but then there will be one that's limited. So, but it will definitely, no matter what, change the way we look at this, especially because the Thurrott article also indicates that these Scarlet Cloud games might be able to be played on phones, on tablets,
on the current Xbox Ones.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's a great point.
But the reason I'm not making that distinction is that usually you might think, well, in that configuration, you might have some games that are available by streaming only, some games that are available on disc only, and it seems like this is not what they're going for. All the games will be available on disc and on the streaming service. So it's really giving the user options on how they want to handle it. If you have a good console and you're going to be playing the same generation of games, because in gaming we talk in generations, PS3 versus Xbox 360, PS4 versus Xbox One, etc., etc. But yeah, so this could be a way to make this feasible much quicker than I anticipated. For all of the good things I say about streaming services, where I think they do work out, you still need this really this significant connection speed. And here, with this compromise, or not even compromise, with these options, you can just choose. There's another element which I did want to mention. It's Capcom has announced that Resident Evil 7 will be released on the Switch, and Resident Evil 7 is, of course, a very graphics intensive game. So what they're doing is that they are actually streaming it in the same way that all of the streaming services work. So you only download a very small app kind of on your Switch, and you pay a small amount, 2,000 yen, to get 6 months worth of using not a Capcom streaming service, but just that one game. So I think developers and publishers are understanding that these technologies might allow them to bypass the manufacturers, because once you have that technology, you don't need to address a specific install base of one console. You can just develop the thing and put your app everywhere, and everyone can play either one game specifically or your whole service. It has a huge potential.
Yeah, Sega's Phantasy Star Online 2 for the Switch works in a similar way. There are all kinds of examples for mobile that work in that way, and it does allow you to just sort of leapfrog in and be like, yeah, we made this game for your platform, kind of, by providing Biohazard 7 Resident Evil Cloud version for the Switch.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks to everybody who participates in our subreddit, gaming news and tech news in general. If you want to submit a story and vote on others, go to dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. We are also on Facebook, facebook.com/groups/dailytechnewsshow. Let's check in with Chris Christensen about new tech and checking in at a Marriott.
This is Chris Christensen from Amateur Traveler with another Tech in Travel Minute. Marriott's doing something interesting with facial recognition and self-check-in kiosks. The kiosk scans your ID, takes a photo, and you input your contact details, and it dispenses the room card right there. So even though you're just off a plane, you don't have to talk to anybody. It sounds perfect for introverts like me. And it cuts the time of check-in from around 3 minutes to under a minute. So that's attractive. Now, they are rolling this out first to Chinese travelers. So this is rolling out in China. But if it's successful, maybe this is something you'll see in a Marriott coming up in your future. I'm Chris Christensen from Amateur Traveler.
How do we feel about this?
Less FaceTime, less human FaceTime. I don't know. I get his point that, it's efficiency, right?
Yeah. No, sometimes this is a good idea. It's all about how well it works, right? If I can just walk up to a kiosk, check in, and be on my way faster, then yeah, I'm all for it.
I mean, remember when you had to check out of hotels? I haven't done that in years.
There was a hotel I checked in recently where I had to go up to a kiosk so that someone could use it for me. I'm like, well, then why is there a kiosk? Like, obviously it wasn't working great.
Good stuff. Shall we move on to the mailbag, Tom?
Let's do
it. We got a bunch of feedback, really good feedback from a lot of folks based on our discussion about tech journalism yesterday and what's working and what might change. KV wrote in, I have to lean in agreement towards the article. For years, I've personally been frustrated by the uncritical coverage, seemingly anyway, of major tech companies going back about a decade. Theranos coverage is one example. Always felt like tech journalists were more starstruck other than getting below the surface. That being said, I'm not saying we should be perpetually combative. Just don't take everything at face value. The media shouldn't inadvertently and as a PR arm, act as a PR arm of the companies in question, celebrating brand fandoms. Personally, I find it distasteful, says KV. Much like they shouldn't be the spokesperson for politicians. If we want consumers of tech and news to be critical thinkers, our press should lead by example. This introspection is valuable as a self-check just to make sure the industry is on the right track.
Yeah, and he added one of the reasons he likes to the point of paying for DTNS and text message from Nate Langston is that we are able to take the time to stand back and cut through the marketing PR fandom fog, which may be why I have a different perspective. He is not the only person who wrote in and said, hey, I think this article is pointing out something because I've seen a lot of uncritical press. I look at so many stories every day, and most of them are unfairly critical, at least in the headline, right? Because that's what pulls people in.
Yeah.
But if you're self-selecting stories because you're like, oh, well, that sounds nice. That's probably not it, but everyone gets a different selection of stories, especially if they're going to different sources. I'm going to very solidly technology sources. And again, and I'm much closer to this because I have to look at all this stuff every day to make this show, to seeing the constant bashing of things. But also a few people are like, I don't read an insert outlet here because they're always bashing insert thing I love here. Well, you're doing yourself a disservice. Every one of these outlets, TechCrunch, Verge, Recode, Ars Technica, CNET, etc., have very good reporters doing work, and they'll also have less good stories get published. If you don't read an entire outlet just because of a few or even a predominance of stories you don't like, you're going to be missing out on some good stuff.
I do want to add something about this. I completely agree with KV. I agree with you as well, Tom. It has become extremely critical, basically ever since the Brexit and Trump election happened, because we realized that tech is can have important effects, and the Russian meddling and all of this was concerning. You have to remember, though, for the past 20 years, we have had a little bit of cheerleading because it was an era of miracles. The internet, the computers, the smartphones, those are incredible things that happen, and it is normal to be enthusiastic. Now we're all taking a step back and trying to understand, well, maybe Elon Musk is not, the second coming of Christ, and let's look at this a little bit more critically.
Shirt on, for one thing.
Yeah, exactly. But there was always some criticism, but there was also a little bit of cheerleading because it was an incredible time to be alive. Tom is boiling over.
Yeah, no, some of it would just be me repeating yesterday, but no, if you were watching certain outlets, there was cheerleading, and we always disdained those. Like, that particular report is just, at CES particularly, you would see outlets that weren't used to covering tech come in and just speak glowingly about stuff.
Sure.
I think that's the source of this. I don't think the election has changed much at all. I felt like there was a lot of vilifying going on for unfortunate and unfair reasons before, and not because I think that the tech CEOs are heroes, but maybe it's all about the filters you put in place and the kinds of stories you read that gives you a different perspective on this stuff.
I'm going to refrain from replying again to your point.
I will as well.
You know what, Patrick? You can't refrain from telling everybody where they can find more of your work online.
Well, you know what? If you speak French, of course I do. If you speak French, or if you feel like you are not progressing fast enough in your learning French, and you're not listening to Le Rendezvous Tech, what are you doing? Go check it out immediately. Le Rendezvous Tech at FrenchSpin.fr. And if you enjoy gaming and my banter about gaming, go check out Pixels in your podcast app right now. Go to the search field, Pixels, subscribe, boom, you're done. Excellent job, you.
And if you want to talk with all kinds of other folks directly about how they actually use tech, unfiltered, there's lots of ways to do that. We have an IRC chat room when we do the show streaming live at 1:30 p.m. Pacific every day. We've got a Discord. If you're a patron, even just giving us $1 a month, which is 5 cents a show, you get access to the Discord. And if you're an analyst at the $20 a month level, which is really just $1 a show, you get access to a Slack. There's all kinds of ways to have other perspectives delivered to you besides just ours at patreon.com/DTNS.
If you want to email us, you can do that too. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com is the address. We're also live Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. 2030 UTC, and find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live.
We'll be back tomorrow with Scott Johnson. Talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Okay,
I
Patrick.
would have so much to say, Tom.
you could say more if you want.
I mean,
I was just like eating popcorn.
there has been a shift. I think it's undeniable. I'm not saying there was never any criticism or,
No, you're absolutely right that there has been an amplification, but it was already there. It went from in my perspective, from 7 to 9, not 0 to 10.
There was some criticism, but there is,
and I'm talking about different kinds of criticism. I think that's the other thing is I'm talking about, there's an interface problem. Well, Google obviously doesn't care about its users. I mean, we've had those stories for decades now. They're not all about political stuff. Political stuff has gone from 0 to 10.
Well,
the shift is Sorry, just I really want to make that
No,
point.
please,
The
go.
shift is philosophical at this point. It is we used to have this moment of elation, which maybe we do when every new piece of technology is invented, where we thought, this is going to fix so many problems. The sunshine will disinfect all of those, and tech will solve everything. And now we're realizing, no, tech isn't solving everything. Elon Musk is not Jesus. Mark Zuckerberg isn't going to provide internet to the whole world, and Google isn't going to solve transportation problems in 5 years, and that elation, I think, is dying down, and that's the important
That's
difference.
fair. And maybe my problem with the perspective on this is I don't feel that we ever thought that. And by we, I mean people that I have co-hosted with or been in the audience of shows that I've been on. I felt like we, for a long time, have been saying, no, this thing isn't really as good as a lot of people are saying. It's not bad, but I feel like that's always been the case. And what I fight against more often is the knee-jerk reaction of people to say, it's really awful. It's the worst thing ever. That seems like the norm for the past 5 or 6 years, is that I'm constantly telling people, no, just because there was a security breach doesn't mean that this is the worst corporation in the world. No, just because there's an interface problem or some yellowing on a screen doesn't mean they're incompetent and they hate you. That's the fight I feel I'm fighting every day. I don't feel like it's been forever since somebody thought a CEO of a tech company was an angel.
Yeah. Sorry, Sarah. I sort of.
Oh no, it's okay. I'm enjoying this banter.
Can I interject? Xbox swims with the stream.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. All right. Continue.
Nice and easy.
Here's a question about latency. You guys were on such a roll that I decided to ask in the post show. But so for anybody who does like audio editing, it's like latency, you get it. It's usually like in milliseconds. What's the most latency that gamers would accept as something that should be better but still doable, if that makes sense?
If you're talking about a competitive, fast-paced game like a first-person shooter, I think most people would accept 50 milliseconds, even if they're somewhat competitive. But that includes everything,
Yeah.
And you can play most games probably with 100 to, even if it's a single player game, maybe 100. It depends on the person. Some people want 60 frames per second, not latency, but frame rate on everything, or they, their eyes melt or something. They complain very loudly. Some people will be okay with even maybe 200 millisecond lag, but that is still a lot of lag to constantly have in your game. So if they can get down to 50 milliseconds latency, that
50, not 15, right?
Yes, 50.
Oh,
50.
okay. Got it.
I think that will be acceptable to a large majority of people, because at that point you're kind of dependent on your networks, your regular internet latency anyway. That's what you get in current games now. So, and the thing is that we didn't talk about it too much, but that compute that's happening on the box that handles collisions, if that's indeed the case, the collisions are obviously the most important thing because they impact your game the most. If they can mitigate latency for the important parts of the game by having a small amount of computing in your box and somehow reconcile it with the images that are incoming from the service, if that works, it can fix it, even if the actual latency is much higher. But if they can predict stuff and
that's fascinating. There's I think it's Alistair Reynolds has a science fiction concept for allowing real-time conversation across light distances. Like even if somebody was on the moon, if you called them, there's too much of a light delay for you to have a real-time conversation. So he came up with this thing that was, I think he called it chinging, where it would predict what you were going to do and then reconcile it as what you were actually doing caught up, so that you could not only do conversation, but you could do full motion like an android being you And you know, of course, that's crazy sci-fi stuff. But this idea that there would be an algorithm doing collision detection and adjusting the game within a few milliseconds so that it feels like there's no lag, and then double checking with the stream as it comes down, and sort of adapting on the fly. I mean, you're talking about it. It sounds like, well, that would always be making mistakes, but at the millisecond level, it probably wouldn't be making too many mistakes that you would ever even notice.
And the network engines are already doing this to an extent. There is some prediction happening in your games, in your multiplayer games now. It seems like it would be a lot less, you know, intense because they have to predict less far off.
Yeah.
But it's already, maybe it's just an extension of that tech that's already being developed, or that has been developed for years. So maybe it's not as strange as I'm guessing.
It is crazy that we are literally seriously having a discussion where the speed of light starts to be a factor in whether this technology can actually work, right?
Especially if you're trying to play from the moon. I mean,
that's the whole goal with quantum bits, that you could conceivably create a communications network that would actually,
because of entanglement.
Entanglement, where you could just, like, you know.
Yeah, but that's a. I have read that is a misunderstanding, that entanglement can't violate the speed of light.
Oh,
I think it can't. But how? I mean, even if it did, you kind of wouldn't know, because you can't get the information that, like, let's say you have one particle and another that are entangled 3 light years away. You can't know that piece of information has been confirmed as the same over there before you travel 3 light years. So it's not. There's something like that. Maybe I'm mistaken.
No, you're on the right track, even if you haven't 100. Maybe you've 100% nailed it, but it's something like that where you can't confirm it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. PBS Spacetime, excellent YouTube channel. I really like it. Talks about all of that stuff.
PBS Spacetime.
Yes, PBS Spacetime, exactly.
Sorry, I was muted for a second. Cool.
From
like public broadcasting system here in the States?
Yeah. They have a bunch of channels. They're really going all in on digital. And they have, I mean, they're financed by a bunch of different sources. But they have a lot of different things. They're working with the Green Brothers. They have a number of different things. And the Spacetime is specifically talking about, you know, the fundamental physics. And it's super interesting. They go back like 5 years, I think, 4 years. So there's a wealth of videos in there, and it gets a little bit hairy. I don't really understand all of it sometimes, but you have to watch some videos like 3 times if you're not a particle physicist. But it's really interesting.
Which, you know, most people are, but few of us.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not part of
same
that.
Slackers who decide to go for an easy degree.
Well, it was a rousing discussion, Patrick, if nothing else.
It was, and I think I need to go to sleep because it's past midnight.
Okay.
And the baby is teething, so he's been.
You definitely need some sleep.
We think he's teething, but we're not sure. He's just being a real little.
He could be possessed.
Annoying baby. He could be possessed. Honestly, it wouldn't.
Teething or
it wouldn't.
Possessed.
One or the
other. Does he want to chew on something constantly?
He's. I don't know. Constantly, he is chewy. And it would be the top teeth, and we can see them, but I don't know if they've been there for a long time. I mean, we can see them below the gums. We don't know if they've been there for a long time or if they're starting to come out.
I thought the
And-
bottom teeth always came in first.
Oh, he already has his bottom teeth.
Oh, I see. So you're familiar with teething. You just think there's more teething.
Yes, but we can't be sure if it's teething or just him being annoying, which he'll also enjoy.
He's a baby.
I mean, like if there's a lot of saliva,
There is a lot of
generally
saliva.
it's teething.
Okay, well, maybe it is. It's our prevailing theory. We're trying to be fair to all of the scientific theories, so we are also hearing from scientists that are telling us that it's not teething, and we're weighing both opinions.
Teach the controversy, Patrick.
Yes, exactly.
All sides. All
vampire?
sides.
I'm sorry?
Is your baby a vampire?
I believe vampires don't express their vampiric traits before puberty, so we're not sure yet.
Oh, okay. So it's not
put in
fangs,
order.
then.
Revision.
I mean, if your baby was a vampire, then I think you would be a vampire also.
Probably.
Well, I mean,
I don't really know.
I don't know.
It was part of our order, but we didn't.
You mean your vampiric order or the order you made for the baby?
That one. But since we're not vampires ourselves, we didn't get very high on the priority on the vampiric priority list. So
Finland would be a bad place to be a vampire.
Well, not in winter.
Well, at this time of year, it would be, right?
Yes, this time of year, yes. It's so.
If you were going to Paris at this time of year and only go into Finland in the winter, then I might suspect vampire.
Yeah, even in Paris, it's really sunny.
We have more buildings to hide in, I guess.
That's true. That's true. So I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, he's teething. It's interesting.
Little vampire kid.
We'll let you get some sleep, man. I'm sorry.
All right. No problem. That was fun. Thank you very much, all of you. Bye, Tom and Roger and Scooter.
Bye.
Thank you, Patrick. See you next time.
Yo.
Oh, I'm not on the show next week.
Oh.
Yeah.
Aww.
Well, that's why I said next time.
You're on.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Clever.
Which will be August 7th.
Exactly.
We'll miss you.
We'll miss you. Bye. And we'll miss you too, video people. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show, and we will be back with more videos tomorrow. Audio people, stick around. There's more to come.